Rainy nights in London always carried a damp chill that seeped into the very marrow of one's bones. Outside the window, the wind howled, and rain smashed against the bulletproof glass like countless bullets. Inside the bedroom, the monotonous, cold beep, beep of the heart monitor was the only sign of life in this dead, silent mansion. Arlo Bennett wrung out a warm towel and carefully wiped the arm of the man lying on the bed. His fingers were trembling, not from the cold, but because the air was thick with the pheromones of a top-tier alpha, permafrost and spirits. It was an aggressive scent, cold, biting, and carrying a suffocating sense of oppression. Even though its owner, Cassius Blackwell, had been in a vegetative coma for a whole year, this lingering power still made Arlo and Omega instinctively want to flee. "Don't be afraid, Arlo. You owe Lila this." Arlo silently chanted that name in his heart, trying to draw strength from his fear. From the moment he signed the contract called a marriage, which was really just high-priced medical caretaking, he had no way out. The astronomical bride price provided by the Blackwell family had been just enough to cover the first gambling debt Nico Vance owed to the gang.
"Arlo, run! Don't look back!"
"Live for me. Take care of Nico." The towering fire at the orphanage 10 years ago, and Lila's final, desperate gaze as she pushed him out of the sea of flames, was Arlo's nightly nightmare and the source of the heavy shackle around his neck. For his benefactor's brother, let alone taking care of a vegetable, he would jump even if it meant going to hell. Arlo took a deep breath, suppressed the bitterness rising in his heart, and continued wiping Cassius's chest. To stimulate the deep consciousness of the Blackwell patriarch, Cassius's mother, Madame Eleanor, required him to release his own pheromones during care for induction therapy. A faint fragrance slowly spread, warm milk mixed with white camellia. It was a contradictory scent. It had the soft, soothing quality of milk, yet the cold fragility of camellias. It seemed so insignificant amidst the strong smell of spirits, yet it tenaciously drilled into Cassius's airways. Boom! A bolt of lightning tore through the night sky, followed by deafening thunder that seemed to explode right by the window. Arlo's movements froze instantly.
The sound was too similar to the loud crash of the orphanage beams collapsing 10 years ago. The post-traumatic stress response instantly crushed his defenses. Arlo cried out, and the water basin crashed to the floor with a loud clang. Fear caused his glands to instantly lose control. A scent of white camellia, rich to the extreme and laced with panicked sweetness, erupted like a tide, instantly filling the room. In that very second, everything changed. The originally steady heart monitor suddenly fluctuated wildly, emitting a piercing shriek. Before Arlo could recover from his fear, a cold, large hand clamped onto his throat like iron pincers, precise and brutal. "Cough!" The world spun as Arlo was slammed onto the bed by an irresistible brute force. The sharp pain of his back hitting the bedboard made his vision go black. The originally sleeping Cassius Blackwell was now half propped up above him. Those eyes, closed for a year, suddenly snapped open, pupils constricting into dangerous vertical slits due to alpha combat instincts. There was no confusion of a fresh awakening in those gray eyes, only monstrous, killing intent and beast-like vigilance. A week had passed since that soul-shaking, stormy night. The air in the rehabilitation room of Blackwell Manor was so oppressive it was suffocating.
Is this the limit? Cassius Blackwell supported himself on the parallel bars, veins bulging on his forehead, sweat dripping down his chiseled jawline and onto the floor. Due to being bedridden for a whole years, his leg muscles hadn't completely atrophied, but his nerve conduction remained sluggish. Every step forward felt like walking on the edge of a knife. Sir, the doctor said rehabilitation needs to be gradual. You've already overloaded yourself today. Arlo stood to the side, holding a towel and water, his voice as faint as a mosquito's hum. He was wearing an oversized white shirt, one of Cassius's old ones. The sleeves were rolled up several times, revealing thin, pale wrists. The purple bruises from being choked that night had faded slightly, but they were still shockingly visible against his fair skin. Cassius let go and collapsed into his wheelchair, his heavy breathing accompanied by the release of intense pheromones. It was the scent of permafrost and spirits, turned spicy and choking by its owner's irritability. "Come here," Cassius commanded coldly. Arlo's body stiffened, but he walked over obediently, crouched beside the wheelchair, and skillfully began to massage Cassius's stiff calf muscles. As Arlo drew near, the faint scent of white camellia and warm milk wafted over again. Cassius's nerves, originally taut from the agonizing pain of rehab, shamefully relaxed once again under the soothing influence of this scent. He cursed inwardly. He loathed this feeling of losing control, loathed how he relied on this human medicine his mother had bought at a high price like a junkie.
His gaze swept critically over Arlo. His eyes finally landed on Arlo's feet. Because of his crouching posture, his pant legs had ridden up, revealing a pair of socks washed so many times they had turned white, the heels worn so thin they were almost transparent. Cassius frowned. His mother said she had paid a large sum for this pheromone treatment contract, buying out this Omega's time and pheromones. Since this Omega had entered the house with the high price tag of being the only specific cure, why was he dressed so shabbily? Is he putting on a show for me, trying to garner sympathy or more money? "Your acting is clumsy," Cassius spoke suddenly, his tone mocking. "The amount the Blackwell family spends on medical equipment maintenance annually is astronomical. We aren't so poor that we can't afford to buy you a pair of new socks." Arlo's fingers flinched, and his cheeks flushed bright red. He subconsciously tucked his feet back. "I'm sorry. I'm used to them. They're still wearable." Just then, the phone in Arlo's pocket suddenly vibrated. It was an old model with a shattered screen. Arlo glanced at the caller ID, and the color instantly drained from his face. I need to take this call." Without even waiting for Cassius to nod, he stood up in a panic and stumbled out of the rehabilitation room. Watching the figure flee in disarray, Cassius's gray eyes instantly darkened. In such a panic? Is there some shameful secret? Or is he reporting my recovery progress to Victor? In the utility room at the end of the corridor. Arlo answered the phone with trembling hands.
Immediately, a man's heart-wrenching wailing came from the other end. "Arlo, save me, please!" It was Nico. Arlo's heart clenched violently, his fingers gripping the phone turning white. "Nico, where are you? What happened?" "I'm at the underground casino. They caught me. I lost. I just wanted to win it back." Nico's voice was accompanied by the chaotic sounds of smashing and cursing in the background. "They said if I don't come up with 50,000 pounds today, they're going to chop off one of my hands. Arlo, you married into a wealthy family now. You have money, right? Please." 50,000 pounds? Arlo felt the world spin. his body slumping weakly against the cold wall. "Didn't I give you all the signing money from before to pay the debts? Where did another 50,000 come from? Go ask for it. Did that rich vegetable not wake up?" Another person took over the phone, their voice vicious and rough. "Listen, pretty little Omega, if we don't see the money by 6 o'clock tonight, we'll mail this kid's fingers to you one by one as a gift." "No, don't touch him," Arlo screamed. "I'll pay. I'll find a way to pay." The call ended. Arlo slid down to sit on the floor, holding his head in despair. Tears flowed silently, but he didn't dare make a sound.
The Blackwell Group's annual charity gala was the most hypocritical Vanity Fair of London's high society. Crystal chandeliers cast a brilliant glow, and champagne towers shimmered with alluring hues under the lights. Amidst the rustle of silks and the clink of glasses, everyone wore an elegant mask. Beneath these masks, however, surged greed for power and probing tests. The protagonist of the night was undoubtedly Cassius Blackwell, who had just awakened from a vegetative state. Arlo, wearing an ill-fitting, expensive custom suit, pushed the wheelchair into the banquet hall. He felt like a sheep straying into a pack of wolves. The probing, mocking, and even lewd gazes around him made him feel like he had thorns on his back. "Lift your head," Cassius spoke suddenly in a low voice from the wheelchair. He wore a deep black velvet tuxedo today. Though pale from long illness, his innate regal aura was undiminished. "Since you took the money to play the role of my partner, don't put on the look of a victim. That makes me feel my money wasn't worth it." Arlo bit his lip, forcing himself to straighten his back. "Yes, sir." Just then, the crowd automatically parted to form a path. Two middle-aged men walked over, holding wine glasses. They were Cassius's biological uncles, Victor and Raymond. They were also the masterminds behind that car accident. "Oh, look who's here!" Victor opened his arms exaggeratedly, his face wrinkled with a smile. "My dear nephew, I truly didn't expect to see you appear here, alive. We all thought you'd be lying in bed for the rest of your life." "I've disappointed you, Uncle." Cassius toyed with the family signet ring on his thumb, his tone terrifyingly calm. "Hell wouldn't take me, so I had no choice but to come back to dispose of the trash in the human world." Victor's smile froze for a split second. Then his eyes turned sinister. A thick, turbid alpha pheromone, carrying the oppressive scent of rotting wood and a fishy stench, was released without warning, rushing straight at Cassius in the wheelchair. This was a naked provocation and attack. Cassius's face went pale instantly, the hand on his knee tightening abruptly. His glands hadn't recovered yet. This high-intensity oppression caused intense physiological nausea and severe neural pain. Just as Cassius grit his teeth, preparing to tough out this wave of attack, a thin figure suddenly took a step sideways, blocking the space between the wheelchair and Victor. It was Arlo. Arlo was trembling all over. As an Omega, facing a top-tier Alpha's attack instinctively made him feel terror, his legs turning to jelly. But he remembered the nightmare of that night. He remembered how Lila had blocked him just like this in the fire, taking the collapsing beam on her back. The strong should protect the weak, Arlo. Cassius was a patient, the weak one, and Arlo was the paid caretaker, the shield. Please have some self-respect. Though his voice trembled, Arlo firmly blocked that nauseating pheromone, spreading his arms to protect the man behind him. "Mr. Blackwell is unwell. Please do not attack a patient with pheromones."
The entire hall fell dead silent.
Victor was stunned, then turned angry from embarrassment. Who do you think you are? You're nothing but damaged goods they bought, and you dare to stop me? Just as he was about to strike, the man in the wheelchair moved. Victor. Cassius's voice was no longer weak, but filled with a chill from hell. The next second, a pheromone of permafrost and spirits, 100 times stronger than before, erupted from Cassius like a tsunami. That was not the aura of a patient. It was the destructive pressure of a top-tier alpha provoked to rage. Scram. Just one word. Victor and Raymond turned pale from the terrifying blast of energy, and the wine glasses in their hands shattered with a snap. They retreated in panic, looking at their nephew in the wheelchair with horror. He recovered? How was that possible? Under the horrified gazes of the crowd, Cassius gripped Arlo's wrist. Push me to the lounge. The heavy doors of the lounge closed, cutting off the noise outside. Before Arlo could react, he was pulled by a massive force, his back slamming heavily against the door panel. Ooh! Cassius stood up from the wheelchair. Though a bit shaky, he indeed stood up. He trapped Arlo between himself and the door, a flame Arlo couldn't understand burning in those gray eyes. It was anger, confusion, and a trace of extremely dangerous desire. Why? Cassius lowered his head, his nose almost brushing Arlo's cheek. Aren't you in it for the money? Victor has plenty of money too. Why didn't you dodge just now? Arlo's heart beat wildly. He could feel Cassius's warm breath spraying against the side of his neck. Because I've worked for you, Arlo explained stutteringly, his eyes darting away. And Lila said, one cannot watch an injured person be bullied. Lila? Cassius narrowed his eyes, that name again, but he didn't want to delve into that name right now. The scene just now, that Omega, thin enough to snap in half, had blocked him, like a small beast protecting its cub. This feeling of being firmly chosen, being protected, was something Cassius had never experienced in his life. Even if it might just be acting, he was damnably moved. Do you know what an alpha needs after being provoked? Cassius's voice became husky and low. Arlo looked up blankly. What? Soothing. As soon as the words fell, Cassius swooped down and bit into the gland at the back of Arlo's neck that was emitting the alluring scent. Ah! Arlo let out a short cry, his body going limp instantly. This was not a normal bite. Cassius's fangs punctured the skin, injecting his dominant alpha pheromones inside, a temporary mark. The scent of spirits domineeringly merged with the milk and white camellia. In that instant, Arlo felt his soul trembling, a numbing electric current rushing through his body. This was an ultimate declaration of possession. In this moment, he was stained full of Cassius Blackwell's scent. Cassius held the limp body tightly in his arms. The violence in his eyes gradually subsided, replaced by a morbid satisfaction. He is mine. At least for now, this scent belongs to me. In the future, Cassius released his teeth, licking the beads of blood on the side of Arlo's neck, his voice rarely carrying a trace of tenderness. Hide behind me when things like this happen. I haven't become so useless that I need an Omega to protect me. Arlo leaned into Cassius's embrace, his mind blank, his heart beating so fast it felt like it would jump out of his throat. Is this care?
This man who always humiliated him actually said such words after marking him? It was 2 a.m, and the rain was pouring down in sheets. When Arlo pushed open the heavy doors of Blackwell Manor, he looked as if he had just been fished out of the water. The custom suit he wore was ruined, splattered with mud and mottled with bloodstains, marks left from applying pressure to Nico's wounds at the hospital. Mixed with this was the stinging scent of hospital antiseptic and the stale tobacco smoke of a cheap taxi. These chaotic odors thoroughly masked the possessive mark Cassius had left on the back of his neck just hours earlier. Arlo was exhausted. Fortunately, the doctor said Nico's hand was saved. Though he owed a massive surgery fee, he had used his ID as a guarantee to secure a 1-week grace period. I just need to find a way to scrape together some money, Arlo muttered to himself, dragging his heavy steps toward the stairs. He only wanted a hot shower to wash away the wretchedness of the night. "Where are you going?" A low, icy voice, seemingly rising from the depths of hell, suddenly rang out in the dark living room.
Click. The floor lamp turned on. Under the dim yellow light, Cassius Blackwell sat on a single sofa. He held a glass of whiskey, with several empty bottles scattered at his feet. His gray eyes were bloodshot, staring dead at Arlo, like a lone wolf that had been waiting by a trap all night. Sir? Arlo swallowed hard, instinctively sensing danger. "You haven't slept yet?" "Sleep?" Cassius let out a short, piercingly cold laugh. He stood up and swayed unsteadily toward Arlo. With his approach, a suffocatingly intense pheromone of permafrost and spirits crushed down like a blanket. This time, there was no comfort in the scent, only violent jealousy and killing intent. Cassius grabbed Arlo by the collar and slammed him hard against the wall. "I took a trip to hell to find my wife, only to find he had run away." Cassius leaned in close to Arlo's neck, sniffing like a police dog. The next second, his expression twisted hideously. Antiseptic, the smell of blood, and the scent of another man. Cassius jerked his head up, the fury in his eyes almost burning Arlo to ash. "Are you that cheap? Arlo, carrying the mark I just gave you, you couldn't wait to run to the hospital for a tryst with that man named Vance? Are you in such a rush to let him cover up my scent?" "No, it's not like that." Arlo was being strangled to the point of breathlessness, his hands desperately pushing against Cassius's chest. "Nico was hurt. I went to save him. He is just we aren't in that kind of relationship." "Still lying," Cassius roared, smashing the wine glass on the floor. Glass shards sprayed everywhere. "For that pretty boy, you abandoned me at the banquet, took my money to support him, and now you come back covered in the smell of his blood to disgust me." "I didn't." Arlo shook his head, crying, the sense of despair bringing him to the verge of a breakdown. Just then, due to the struggle, a silver necklace Arlo always hid inside his shirt slipped out. It was an old-fashioned oval metal locket, unremarkable, but to Arlo, it was more important than his life. He instinctively reached out to cover the locket, trying to hide it back away. This protective gesture thoroughly stung Cassius's eyes. To Cassius, this was Arlo defending a love token from his adulterer to the death. "Is this the person you hold in your heart?" Cassius laughed out of extreme anger. He grabbed the thin silver chain, his knuckles turning white from the force. "No, Cassius, please, don't touch it." Arlo let out the most wretched scream of the night.
His pupils contracted violently, his hands gripping Cassius's wrist so hard his fingernails left bloody scratches on the Alpha's arm. "Don't touch it! That's the only thing I have, please!" "The only thing? Then what am I? What is the mark I gave you?" Cassius's rationality snapped completely. He didn't need any explanation. He wanted to destroy this thing that Arlo cherished so much. The thing Arlo would even fight him for. Snap! The fragile silver chain couldn't withstand the Alpha's tyrannical strength and broke. Cassius yanked the locket off. The clasp popped open and the contents fell onto the floor. It was a yellowed black and white photo, only the size of a thumb. Cassius looked down, the mockery at the corner of his mouth ready to turn into the most vicious verbal attack. However, the words stuck in his throat. The photo wasn't of some kept man. It was a young girl, looking only 17 or 18, wearing a plain orphanage uniform and smiling gently. She held an infant in swaddling clothes. On the back was a line of faded writing. Lyra and baby Nico, 2015. "This is your adulterer?" Cassius froze, his mind going blank for a moment. "A woman and a child? Give it back." Arlo looked as if his soul had been sucked out. He knelt on the floor, his trembling hands reaching out to pick up the photo. Large teardrops smashed onto the floor, mixing with the rainwater and mud. "That's not an adulterer." Arlo's voice was shattered, carrying 10 years of suppressed pain and grievance, finally erupting completely on this rainy night. "That is Lila. That is the Lila who saved my life." Arlo looked up. Those eyes, usually so submissive and enduring, were now filled with hatred and despair toward Cassius. "Did you see clearly? Mr. Blackwell, that was my best friend in the orphanage. That baby is her brother, Nico. 10 years ago, in the orphanage fire, if she hadn't pushed me out of the room, I would have been the one burned to death. The person who died under that beam would have been me." Arlo screamed in a breakdown, hammering his own chest hard with his fist. "Her only dying wish was for me to take care of her baby brother. I did it to repay a debt. I did it for atonement. My life was given by her, so I can't give up Nico. I married you. I fawned over you like a dog, all to pay my debts to her. I don't have a lover. I have never been loved. I only have this photo." Arlo convulsed with sobs, carefully cupping the photo in his palms, trying to wipe away the dust, as if it were some sacred, inviolable relic. "Are you satisfied now? You broke it. Are you satisfied?" Boom. Another clap of thunder rolled outside the window, but this time Cassius heard no thunder. His ears were filled only with Arlo's heart-wrenching cries.
The air in the living room seemed to freeze solid. Only the sound of the rain outside continued to monotonously beat against the glass. Cassius Blackwell knelt on one knee. His words, "I'm sorry," dissipated into the air, receiving no response. Arlo remained curled up on the floor, his hands desperately shielding the mud-stained black and white photo, his body trembling uncontrollably from cold and fear. His eyes were hollow, as if he had sealed himself within a shell, refusing to process any information from the outside world. Cassius looked at Arlo's bare feet. There was a small cut made by a shard of glass, with beads of blood seeping out and staining the expensive carpet. His heart felt as if it were being violently crushed by an invisible hand. Cassius took a deep breath,
forcibly suppressing the sour bitterness surging in his chest. He knew words were pale now. He had to do something. He reached out, his movements incredibly light, as if trying to touch a startled butterfly. "Arlo, the floor is cold. You can't lie here. Let me help you." The moment his fingers touched Arlo's shoulder, Arlo's entire body jerked violently, and a whimper, like that of a wounded small beast, escaped his throat. "Please, forgive me. I'll do whatever you want." Cassius's hand froze in midair, a trace of pain flashing through his eyes. This was what he had brought to Arlo. Not sanctuary, but conditioned fear.
"I won't harm you. Never again." Cassius hesitated no longer. He leaned down, ignoring Arlo's weak struggles, and forcefully scooped up the young man, who was soaked through and as light as a feather, into a bridal carry. Too light. In these past few days, he had somehow never noticed that the body in his arms was so thin it felt bony to the touch, the spine clearly visible. Cassius strode with Arlo toward the master bedroom on the second floor, rather than the cramped guest room where Arlo had been staying. "Put me down! There's mud on me! I'll dirty the bed!" Arlo squirmed uneasily in his arms, his voice so hoarse it was barely audible. "If it gets dirty, we'll change it." Cassius's tone was forceful, yet carried a tremor that was hard to detect. Even if you burned down the entire manor, it wouldn't matter. He gently placed Arlo on the wide, black, king-sized bed, then turned and rushed into the bathroom, wringing out a warm towel. Arlo curled into the corner of the bed, staring at him vigilantly. Cassius sat by the bed, his movements unfamiliar and clumsy yet gentle, wiping away the rain and tear tracks from Arlo's face bit by bit, as well as the glaring red mark on his neck. When the warm towel touched Arlo's cold fingers, Cassius paused. Those hands were covered in tiny cuts, with blood residue from saving a life at the hospital still under the fingernails. Yet these hands had just been desperately protecting that photo, terrified he would snatch it away. "The photo," Arlo spoke suddenly, his eyes searching anxiously. "It's here." Cassius took the wiped-clean photo in the broken silver necklace from his pocket. "It's on the nightstand. No one will take it away. And I promise you, I will find the best craftsman to repair it, exactly as it was before." Hearing this, Arlo's taut nerves seemed to finally loosen a fraction. Extreme exhaustion and signs of a high fever hit him simultaneously. His eyelids began to droop, and his body gradually relaxed into the soft bedding. "Now sleep." Cassius released his pheromones. It was no longer a violent oppression, but the permafrost and spirits scent controlled to an extremely subtle concentration. The coolness of a clear sky after snow, mixed with the mellowness of aged liquor. This was a soothing method unique to top-tier alphas. Nesting. Constructing an absolutely safe territory with one's own scent to envelop one's partner. Under the soothing influence of the pheromones, Arlo could finally hold on no longer and closed his eyes groggily. After confirming Arlo was asleep, Cassius tucked him in, stood up, and walked out of the bedroom. The moment the door closed, the tenderness on his face vanished instantly, replaced by a thunderous grimness. He was the mad dog of the Blackwell family, a demon who had crawled back from hell. Now that the truth was clear, it was time to settle some scores. Cassius dialed his personal assistant. "It's me." The assistant on the other end was clearly startled by the 3 a.m. call. "Boss, what are your orders?"
3 things. Do them immediately." Cassius walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the storm outside, his voice as cold as ice shards. "First, check which hospital Nico Vance is in. Settle all his debts and immediately arrange for the best medical team to transfer him to a VIP ward. If that's not enough, fly in experts from abroad. He is Arlo's brother, which means he is a Blackwell. I will not allow him to die." "Yes, I'll arrange it immediately." "Second," Cassius narrowed his eyes, murderous intent churning in their depths, "find out exactly which underground casino made the move and who threatened Arlo that he had to pay the money tonight. Since they dared to touch my Omega, they must be prepared to pay the price. Before dawn, I want that casino to disappear from London." "Understood, boss." "Third," Cassius paused, his gaze falling on the broken necklace, "contact the best jewelry restorer in Switzerland and send the necklace to him. No matter the cost, this necklace must be restored." After hanging up, Cassius didn't return to the room immediately. He stood in the hallway and lit a cigarette, but didn't smoke it, just letting the tobacco burn. Amidst the curling smoke, he recalled Arlo's heart-wrenching scream, "I have never been loved." Cassius's heart seized with pain again. He prided himself on being astute all his life, yet emotionally he was as stupid as a pig. He had mistaken Arlo's endurance for a guilty conscience, and Arlo's sacrifice for greed. With the most vicious words, he had flayed the soul of the only person in the world who had shielded him in a time of crisis. Arlo. Cassius extinguished the cigarette butt in his palm. The burning pain kept him lucid. This marriage had changed from an initial transaction to a unilateral debt he owed. If the former Arlo lived for atonement, then from today on, the rest of Cassius Blackwell's life would exist for only one thing: redemption. He pushed open the door and returned to the room filled with the scent of white camellia and milk. The young man on the bed had flushed cheeks from the fever and frowned uneasily even in his sleep. Cassius lay down beside him. He didn't touch him, but stayed a short distance away, guarding him like an evil dragon guarding its treasure, sleepless for the entire night. It was a long, rainy night. After the rain stopped, the sky over London would brighten, but as for the darkness in Arlo's heart, Cassius didn't know how long it would take to illuminate. But he had time. Even if it took a lifetime, he would piece Arlo's shattered heart back together, one fragment at a time.
After the rain, the sky cleared over London, with thin sunlight piercing through the clouds. 3 days later, when Arlo woke up, he found himself sunk into pillows that were incredibly soft. The air no longer held that suffocating oppression, but a faint, reassuring scent of cedar and spirits, the nesting aura specifically restrained by an alpha to soothe their partner. He moved his fingers and found an IV drip attached to the back of his hand, delivering nutrient solution. "Awake?" a hoarse voice came from the bedside. Arlo instinctively shrank his shoulders, a defensive posture cultivated over a long time. But the next second, he saw the usually well-groomed, imperial Cassius Blackwell sitting on the carpet by the bed, dark circles under his eyes, and a decadent stubble on his chin. This arrogant man had actually watched over him all night. "Sir, Arlo started, his voice terribly hoarse. A glass of warm water was immediately brought to his lips.
Cassius didn't even dare to sit on the bed for fear of startling him, instead half kneeling by the side to feed him the water. "Listen to me."
Cassius put down the cup and took 2 items from the table behind him. First, a brand new velvet box. Second, a document. Cassius opened the box. Inside lay the once broken silver necklace. It had been repaired to perfection, even shinier than before, and the originally cheap iron clasp had been replaced with sturdy platinum. I also had the photo treated for preservation and resealed. Cassius gently placed the box in Arlo's palm, his movements cautious, as if Arlo was the fragile porcelain. No one can ever break it again, including me. Arlo touched the regained necklace with trembling fingertips, his eyes instantly reddening. This wasn't just a necklace, it was his lifeline. "Thank you. Thank you. Don't say thank you." Cassius closed his eyes in pain. "I'm the one who should say sorry. Arlo, I've investigated everything. About Lila, about Nico, about the suffering you've endured all these years." Mentioning Nico, Arlo looked up sharply, panic flashing in his eyes. "Don't worry," Cassius immediately soothed him. "Nico has already had his surgery with a top-tier medical team. He's in a VIP ward and should wake up tomorrow. As for those debt collectors," Cassius's eyes went cold, then softened when looking back at Arlo. "They will never appear in London again. I've settled that debt for you." Arlo stared at him blankly, his mind empty. The mountain that had plagued him for so long, suffocating him and forcing him to sell himself into slavery, just disappeared. "Then how much do I still owe you?" Arlo asked quietly, habitually humble. "I can work, I can—" "Arlo!" Cassius interrupted him, a catch in his voice. He picked up the second item, the contract marriage agreement signed back then. "Rip!" Under Arlo's shocked gaze, Cassius tore the agreement to shreds. "There is no debt anymore, and I have no right to buy you with money ever again." Cassius threw the scraps into the trash, then held Arlo's hand, pressing his cheek against Arlo's cold palm. This was a posture of complete submission, exposing his vulnerable spots to the other. "You are free, Arlo." Cassius looked up. Those gray eyes no longer held arrogance, only bottomless remorse and deep affection. "I will cover all of Nico's follow-up treatment costs. This is compensation to you. After he fully recovers, you can leave here, take your brother anywhere you want with a handsome sum of money. I won't stop you." Arlo's heart beat violently. Freedom, it was a word he never dared to dream of. "But," Cassius's voice trembled slightly, staring intently into Arlo's eyes like a prisoner awaiting sentencing. "If you are willing to stay, not as a tool to repay debt, not as my medicine, but as my partner, my lover, I swear I will spend the rest of my life atoning. I will be a shield for you and take care of Nico, just as you blocked in front of me at the banquet that day. I will bring the best things in the world to you. Arlo, please, give me a chance to court you anew, okay?" The room fell into a long silence. Arlo looked at the alpha before him, who had laid down all his dignity. He thought of the freezing rain last night, and also of the wind and rain this man had blocked for him. He thought of the previous humiliation, and also of the warmth currently radiating from his palm. Arlo was actually very simple. All his life,
all he wanted was for someone to see his efforts, for someone to block the collapsing sky for him when he couldn't hold on anymore. Lila was gone, and he thought he'd have to walk in the rain alone for the rest of his life. But now, someone was willing to hold an umbrella for him. In the air, the pheromones of warm milk and white camellia, which had originally shrunk back in fear, tentatively released a wisp, gently entwining with the cold scent of permafrost and spirits on Cassius. The two pheromones blended in the air, no longer suppressing, but gently tangling. Arlo didn't withdraw his hand. He looked at Cassius, a tear sliding from the corner of his eye. But for the first time, a heartfelt, relieved, faint smile appeared on his lips. "Then I want to see Nico first," Arlo said softly. "Sir Cassius, can you go with me?" This awkward, faint Cassius sounded like the music of heaven to him. Cassius froze for a second, then abruptly stood up and pulled Arlo tightly into his arms. This time he held him firmly, as if to knead him into his very bones and blood. "Of course, I'll go with you. I'll go anywhere with you."
In the gardens of Blackwell Manor, white camellias were in full bloom. Nico's arm was still in a sling, but his spirits were much better. He was sitting under a parasol drinking juice, bragging to the butler nearby about his gaming record. Cassius had talked to him and would send him back to school after full recovery. On a swing not far away, Arlo wore a soft beige sweater, holding a book. Sunlight spilled over him, making him look as if he were glowing. He was no longer that bony, submissive shadow. His cheeks had color and his eyes held light. A jacket carrying body warmth was gently draped over his shoulders. Cassius embraced him from behind, skillfully planting a kiss on his cheek. "The wind is picking up. Let's go inside?" "Just a while longer." Arlo leaned back into Cassius's broad chest, fingering the repaired necklace around his neck. "If Lila could see this from heaven, she would find it incredible. She would be happy for you." Cassius clasped his hand, fingers interlaced. "I will also confess to her every day until she forgives my bastard behavior toward you back then." Arlo smiled, turned his head, and gently kissed Cassius's lips. It was a kiss filled with the sweet fragrance of milk and the richness of spirits. The nightmare of the past had ended. The brokenness of the past had healed. That boy crying in the rainy night had finally found his only shield, and had also become the billionaire's sole obsession at the tip of his heart.